Economic development in a country involves both the formal and the informal sector. The informal sector's contribution to the GDP is not in any small measure. This is Business Matters. My name is Stephen Ipalabo Lawson. To provide an inclusive economy, the voices of all players must be given a channel for it to be heard. And because most of the operations are what basically impacts on the economic landscape. Let's see our business update.
On Business Update this week, Minister of Agriculture on yam exportation. Globacom launches free data day welcome back offer. According to statistics by the Food and Agricultural Organization FAO, Nigeria accounts for 61.7% of total yam output in the world, with over 60 different varieties growing in the country. The revelation by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Audu Ogbe, that the federal government is targeting $13.7 billion worth of foreign exchange annually from the export of yam is an indication of government seriousness in diversifying the foreign exchange base of the economy. A technical committee on Nigeria Yam Export Program has been set up by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture.
We're working together. That's why we have interagency cooperation now. About almost 10 agencies in Abuja are working on the Zero Reject program. We've got to make sure, that's what we're talking about. There's still work to do. You must put your address on the carton, the quality, the chemical analysis, the certificate must be there. Because out in Europe, they are afraid of things coming in that may cause disease for them.
The governor of Benue State, who was represented by his deputy, Engineer Benson Abonu, commended the initiative and stated Nigeria will have more agricultural produce to export in the nearest future.
We are particularly delighted coming from Benue State, where all the yams that are being exported today come from. We are the food basket of the nation, and we have gone agricultural because we have decided to make agriculture the mainstay of our economy.
And we are expecting in every year to rake in $8 billion out of the yam business, global yam business of $13.7
The Nigerian yam export flag-off will not only establish Nigeria on the world map, but also provide jobs for the young unemployed in the country. Free Data Day, the new offer which gives Glo customer free data for a whole day when the voice or data usage threshold within 7 days, which qualifies them to enjoy the free data day. Globacom Zonal Business Coordinator Lagos explained that the offering enables customers on the Glo network to do so much more on the internet by browsing free of charge for a whole day. The offer is open to all prepaid subscribers.
Prerequisite for the free data is 150 naira voice plus 100 naira data consumed, or 250 naira data consumed. So that's basically it. The essence is to reward our customers, the faithful customers.
The company also launched Glo Welcome Back. It gives customers who have not used the Glo network in the last 30 days with free 6,000 naira credit when they recharge their lines. The idea behind the offer, they explained, that is to give each customer sense of belonging.
Those that come back after 30 days, they get free 6,000. Those that simply stay, including those that come baback after 30 days, they get free data when they use the 150 or 150 naira on calls and 100 MB data, or 250 naira on calls. And you do it over 7 days. We are not saying do it at once. I don't think any operator in Nigeria we'll even think of doing that in today's economy. But this is Globacom. We are Nigeria.
Globacom says it is more committed than ever to provide subscribers with the best value for money by making its products and services accessible to its existing and new customers. Up next is the summary details from the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
The connection between SME and the informal sector, especially when it has to do with entrepreneurship, is no longer something we have to leave out in the larger space. But on this particular episode, we are going to explore how that connection can help us drive the outcomes in terms of our economic outlook. This is Professional Segment. Well, you're welcome. If you're just joining us, this is the professional segment of your program, Business Matters. Today, joining me in the studio is a professor of planning and geography from the Cardiff University. She is a woman who has a widespread research expertise, especially with China-African trade and the informal economics, as well as social inclusion. We are going to be discussing the topic, the role of the informal economy in nation building. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Professor Allison Brown. How are you, Prof?
Fine. Delighted to be here in Lagos and NTA.
I'm made to understand that this is actually your first time in Nigeria. How's the experience been so far?
Well, I've worked in many different countries in Africa, in 14 altogether, but this is my first time in Nigeria, my first time in Lagos.
One of the words that jumps up to me, the Business Matters is a business program that is focused on micro and small scale businesses. We know that entrepreneurship is not just a buzzword, it's actually a reality that we experience every single day. Will you argue for the fact that the informal economy actually is they demonstrate entrepreneurship at their own level?
I think that it's quintessentially part of what people do. They innovate, they work within quite a number of constraints and often don't have access to very good places of work, may not get much support from government authorities. But for example, in some of the work that I've done on China-Africa trade, I've talked to quite a number of Nigerians in Guangzhou in southern China who are importing all the goods that are sold in markets. And there's a whole series of chains of economic transactions which take place before things reach the buyer. And those are changing all the time. It's such an example of entrepreneurship. Use of the mobile phone, how you use that in business, the coming of mobile money, which is not quite so prevalent here in Nigeria as it is in Kenya. But in Kenya, you can buy your second-hand clothes through a mobile money transaction. You can get a bus ticket on the local commuter minibuses through a mobile money transaction. And I'm sure that Nigeria will be very quickly following suit, because I think Nigeria is very much a leader in the region.
Well, we are leaders in the region. But interestingly, we actually have embraced mobile money technology, as a matter of fact, in terms of transaction. Much of the banks, as a matter of fact, have looked at that as not just a source of revenue for themselves, but also the convenience that it actually offers the small entrepreneurs, even the end users. It's quite amazing. There is a myth that the informal economy, the players in that sector, don't actually pay taxes. How true is that?
I think that it's a complete misunderstanding of the role of the informal economy. What we often find is that people pay taxes through a number of different routes. They might pay value-added tax on their purchases. They very often pay a license fee to their local authority. But the problem is, if you're informal, you lack security. You don't have a secure place of work, or you don't have a secure contract with your employer. So you find yourself making all sorts of other payments which are not necessarily formal. And that means there are transactions which are not able to be collected by governments, so that the service provision is perhaps less good as it might be. But there's a critical need for recognition of the huge role of this entrepreneurship and employment, which employs so many people and is such a creative force for economic change.
No, certainly it is a creative force, because part of the things we oftentimes neglect is the fact that there is a partnership that exists between the informal economy and as well the formal economy, which represent the government. And the challenge that has communication oftentimes bring forth most of the time happens to create a situation where the informal sectors become a victim, and they're not being given the rightful place as key players in that role. Where do you see especially the local government at this point in time, the role of the local government in facilitating a much more inclusive informal sector within the national development frame?
We had some inspiring examples which were presented by Richard Dobson of AET, Asiya Tafuleni of Durban, and they've been working over 20 years in partnership with their local government to find ways of addressing the small-scale micro problems that emerge. So they managed to use a disused bit of infrastructure and create a medicine market and create pedestrian links that linked the city centre with the main bus station. And then the herb traders had a secure environment, they had a cover over their head, they had a secured market. But that takes organisation. It takes organisation by the communities, by the business communities, so that they can speak with a united voice and so that they can develop links with local government. Local governments are just key. They are in the forefront, they're accessible, and it's very important that there's a counterpart with whom informal economy operators can work. But it has to be a process of accommodation, of understanding the needs of people for livelihoods, to be able to earn enough to support their kids, to send their kids to school, but also to create a partnership and strengthen the income for local government. So I think what local governments have to remember is that it's incredibly easy to destroy jobs, but it's very difficult to create them. And that what we have is huge potential to contribute to local economic development, to contribute to everybody's wealth, if we have the right attitude and work together in partnership in this inclusive city approach.
All right. It's amazing because for us here on Business Matters, partnership matters a lot. Because the government needs the revenue with which they have to be able to create a better infrastructure for the players, whether they're in the formal or informal sector. But talking about opportunities, where does culture play in all of this value chain?
Well, I think increasingly we're seeing that distinct identity is incredibly important in having a perspective on business and business development. And that many of the cultural practices that we see in the informal economy reflect historic cultures. It reflects the tradition of various ethnicities who've been trading for many generations. Many Igbo traders have told me that they've traded for generations up and down the African coast. And then it's a very natural step to move to Europe or to move to China in their trading patterns. So I think it's part of the Nigerian culture. I think it's in the Nigerian blood. But I do think that we have to address the vulnerabilities. We have to address problems of insecurity. And we have to make space to give people a voice. And so that having a dialogue between operators and politicians who represent them, having a dialogue between the professionals in local government, and being able to shape your own environment is critical. So it's very easy to intervene and do the wrong things, to build a market off street that might be empty because it doesn't draw the customers in, to put a drain in the wrong place. So infrastructure changes have to be designed with and for those people to protect their livelihoods.
Oh, that's amazing. We know, for example, part of what my voice we always lend in is the question of what the role of the media is in all of this. Urban renewal, urban regeneration, whatever those eyeballs words have. For the informal economy, who basically one of the key players in national development, we want to be sure that the media is actually playing a fair umpire. Where do you see the media in all of this?
I think it's incredibly important. Simply by being on this program is a great privilege to be able to talk to you and to talk to the audience as well. But I think the media is a place where you can air debates, where you can air the challenges, to look at the positives but also the negatives and find that area of compromise. And there are many people here in Nigeria who will speak much more articulately than I about their experiences. I can bring comparative information, but we have experts on the ground. We have people who are working as waste pickers and as street traders. but we also have people in universities who've worked with them and studied them for many years. So I think Nigeria has the expertise within its own community.
Where does the local economy themselves have to be able to understand that this is not just going to be a short dash race, it's obviously going to be a marathon? Do you think it's something they themselves have to harm themselves in terms of education, in terms of awareness, in terms of the kinds of products that actually turn out, in terms of the kind of relationship that they have with the government and the different agencies? You think it's critical for them to be able to embrace themselves with that?
I think that's a very important point. I think not so much on the products, but certainly on the way that they're organised and the measures. But I think what's critically important is, well, two factors really. First of all, that we can make short-term gains. We can change a drain, we can change a shelter in a market, and sometimes that can be done by communities themselves, provided they have assurance that they'll be there for a number of years and they can invest the money. So we can demonstrate a lot through short-term practice gains. But eventually it probably needs legislative change to ensure that the urban bylaws enable rather than penalise urban livelihoods. So we've got to have an enabling legislative framework, and that takes a long time. It takes a long time to make sure that there's not inconsistencies within the various highway laws or urban planning laws or local government power laws, and that they're specifically designed for an African megacity context, but that they're designed in a way that's inclusive and enabling. And so that legal underpinning takes many years, and it takes a partnership between those that are most intimately affected and between an enlightened government.
One of the things that I always remember is that people say what defines us different from the developed nations is that there is a gap between research and how you implement the findings of research. So obviously, like resounded several times, there is a need for both government and even the players to integrate the university as a very key element in driving an inclusive economy, so to speak. All right.
Universities are critically important because they generate new ideas, they generate knowledge. But what we also argue is that the co-creation of knowledge is important. So there's one of the problems with the informal economy is there's a big lack of data. We often don't know really how many people are involved, and it's difficult to measure their economic contribution. We don't know where they work or how often they work in different localities, and the nuances of their enterprise. And so what we need to understand that, and the people best placed to generate that are the communities themselves. But they need to do that in a way that's accessible, that gives them the power in which to talk constructively with local governments, but also to be able to own that knowledge so that it's knowledge that's useful and helps us understand how the sectors work. And universities have a key role in facilitating that. But there has to be, I think, a willingness on all sides to create these partnerships to go forward.
Prof, this is quite insightful for me. I don't know that on the program we never want to have a stop, but television comes with airtime and it comes with limited time. The informal economy, like you rightly agreed with us, it's a critical part of the national fabric, and there is a need for us to explore and pursue partnership. Regardless of the fact that some of these things can be time-taken, legislature is actually key to guarantee both security and sustainable development. Well, any last words for us before we wrap up this segment? What do you want to say to the team in Nigerians out there, those entrepreneurs, whether they're in the informal sector or the formal sector? What do you have for them to say, hey, listen, don't give up, this is the way to go? Your last words.
I think that the energy and the partnership that I have witnessed is the future. It's the future for the children of Nigeria, but it's also an example for the whole of West Africa. You know, this is a leading economy in Africa, and I'm sure that it will lead in good practice in many aspects as well. And thank you so much for inviting me onto the program.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you so very much. Professor Allison Brown is the person we've been speaking with, exploring the topic, the role of the informal economy a national development. And this has been amazing. One of the words that I took out of this is that we need critical partnership in order for us to grow an inclusive economy. You have a role to play. The government, if you're listening to this, have a role to play as well for us to ensure we save livelihood. On this note, we're going to be coming back after this timeout.
Coming up is our business success tips.
Partnership is more than a buzzword. As a matter of fact, it's critical that partnership is embraced among all stakeholders in order for us to be able to create a business environment that is both inclusive and dynamic. This is so much we can bring to you on Business Matters for this edition. Please follow us on our different social media platforms. As I come your way again next week, I remain Stephen Ipalibo Lawson. Bye for now.